clock isn't right, though, is it?
No.
A little
What's not?
briefer than.
It's 5:30.
Oh, we've been finalists too.
All right, thank you. We'll call the combined study session regular meeting for July 12th to order. Mrs. Callan could not be with us tonight. And if you'll please stand for the pledge. Thank you all for braving the heat and getting out and joining us tonight. A couple of neat special recognitions to start with, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Ritter.
Yes, Dr. Harrell, please, for Hillcrest High School.
Good evening, Mr. President and members of the board. It's always an exciting opportunity to celebrate any time where our students or faculty have exceptional items that occur on a national level. And with this particular group, we have the good fortune to see them frequently. They are a very high-performing group with Mr. Dave Davis and HTV Magazine and HTV News. Mr. Davis is en route. He got tied up a little bit, but we do have Mr. Rush here, and we have a student here that and we're going to discuss a little bit about his experiences and the experience that HTV had with yet another group of Emmy Awards. So, Mr. Rush.
Well, it is a pleasure to be here again, and we're not like some of these sports teams that have the same players all the time. We have free agents coming in and out, and new players all the time. But it is remarkable. It's miraculous. It's hard work. It is dedication, and it is a product of the Springfield Public Schools, and it is an honor and a privilege, like I said, to be here. I'm going to introduce two people that are on staff, Jody Putman and Chandler Reed, and I'm going to read off the Emmy Award winners that they had. HTV Magazine was newscast was for the whole staff. Human interest feature, Allie Reynolds and Keith Reynolds. Sports feature, HTV staff. Public affairs, community service, HTV staff. And writing, Allie Randolph and Keith Reynolds. And then HTV Magazine was also recognized for other honorable mentions in news story, human interest feature, sports news, public affairs, community service, camera, and editing. I'm going to invite each one of these students to just tell you a little bit about what they do and their experiences.
HTV has been a really good program. Dave Davis, he's an excellent teacher and mentor, and with everything that we do, he, like, even outside of HTV, he can help us out, and there he is. And
there's an all-star game tonight.
You're right, and it's here.
Go ahead, Chad.
But with HTV, like for the sports feature, I mean, we're all pretty dedicated. For example, I stayed there until 1 o'clock in the morning, putting this thing together, and it's taught me a lot about dedication and getting things done, and just letting people know about different stories, especially in regards to teenagers. So that's my experience.
Kind of like Chandler, this has just been a really great experience for me, expanding my knowledge in the technology kind of world. Personally, I've had a lot to do with the social side because I'm also on cabinet, and HTV has really helped with getting the word out there in a different way and a new way, and I think that it's really good that we get to learn earlier, sooner than later, kind of. So I think it's good experience.
You can tell we took notes last night, prepared for this. Sorry I was late. I thought I was right on time. I'd like to congratulate our kids and the Central kids. It's a great honor from for the regional Emmy Awards out of St. Louis, and we did very well. I think we entered 14 things and got recognition on 11 of them, and considering what the contest cost, we're really glad about that because it's like $25 an entry, I think. So we're very pleased to have the recognition. This is a really good representation of our class and our school, actually, right here with Chandler and Jody. And thank you for giving them some limelight tonight.
Question? Jody and Chandler, before you guys sit down, what year will you be next year? Both be seniors. Okay, thanks. So we may see you back here. All right. Let's see, Dr. Ritter and Mr. Chodas.
Mr. Chodas, please. Our finance department, again, came through with flying colors, if I may. Go.
And I'd like to invite Mr. John Everest up to the podium. Mr. Everest was the true leader of the district's effort in obtaining this award, and I'd like to read the notice. It's brief. Congratulations to the School District of Springfield R12. They have won the Association of School Business Official International's Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting Program for excellence in the preparation and issuance of the fiscal year-end 2009 school system. This district has provided a high-quality, comprehensive annual financial report for the fiscal year ended 2009. The Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting Program was designed by ASBO International to enable school business officials to achieve a high standard of financial reporting. The award, the highest recognition for school district financial operations offered by ASBO, is only conferred to school systems that have met or exceeded the standards of the program. By preparing and presenting a CAFR, the School District of Springfield R12 validated the credibility of their school system's operations, measured the integrity and technical competence of the business staff, assisted in strengthening their presentations for bond issuance statements, and provided professional recognition. And I'd like to thank Mr. Everest.
Thank you. Every year the guidelines become a little more stringent for the award, and we just believe it's important to stay on the cutting edge and continue to strive to get that award every year. So, thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I have a question, Mr. Chodas. Stay there, but equivalency, and when it's always nice when we can, in essence, applaud ourselves. But throughout the state of Missouri, do you happen to know what, or how many of these are awarded, or?
Yes, for this particular year, there were 3 other school districts that received this award: Columbia, Rockwood, and St. Louis Special District.
So it's a high honor.
Yeah. It is. There are 5 awards in all that we strive to obtain, and this is the 3rd of the 5. There's kind of a season where we get them all in, and I know at least one of them, well, actually 2 of them, we were the only district to earn the award. So,
thank you.
Congratulations again. Great. Any agenda modifications that any member needs to make? My report is fairly short. Let me just again thank many of our partners in education for all the help that they provide the district. Before we recognize a special one, let me just read a few that have been active for a long time. All About Trees, Associated Electric Co-op, Central States Industrial, Community Partnership and Caring Communities, Family Video Movie Club, Firehouse Pottery, Forgiven Full Service Salon, Great Southern Bank, Jordan Valley Community Health Center, Juanita K. Hall for the Performing Arts, Missouri State University and Missouri State Career Center, PNMAC, RSVP Council of Churches of the Ozarks, and the Springfield Council of PTA's Clothing Bank. And we do have one that we would like to recognize especially tonight, and that's Wesley United Methodist Church. Pam?
Thank you. as you said, Wesley United Methodist Church is this month's featured partner in education. This faith-based organization has been an outstanding partner with the district for many years. While they've been an asset district-wide, the majority of their partnership projects take place with York Elementary. Wesley United Methodist Church provides a tremendous amount of support to the students and staff at York, and we thank them for their continued service. Mary Beth Robertson is here tonight to share with you a little bit more about this partnership.
Hello, I'm Mary Beth Robertson, and I'm very happy to be here with you this evening and let you know some of the things that Wesley United Methodist Church has done with York Elementary. First, I will tell you that I am a retired Springfield Public School teacher, and I taught over at Westport and Studi, and 22 of my 33 years have been in a Title I school. So when I retired 3 years ago and knew that our church, Wesley, was involved with York, I was anxious to be a part of that because my heart is with Title I schools and the staff that are there. So this evening I just kind of want to let you know some of the things that Wesley has done and some things that we hope to continue to do also. Wesley, for the last 3 years, we have purchased shirts for attendance, for good attendance. We have given money, 1 year $500, another year $600 for prizes, for quarterly prizes that the children would earn for good attendance, because as you know, if you're not in school, you're not going to learn anything. We also have purchased tennis shoes and Crocs 1 year, and that was quite an undertaking in trying to size their feet and get those shoes and tennis shoes. We have purchased gifts for economics units for the students to have when they earned their little money in the banks and then would go to the store to buy things. We purchased gifts for that. We have purchased this year, we did snacks and water bottles for the testing time at the end of the spring. We provided for that. We have done toothbrushes and toothpaste. We have purchased hardback books, and then we had people in our church go to a radio station and tape those so that they would have those in their corners in kindergarten. That's what I taught, kindergarten. So that was important to me. And we have a lady that makes banners in our church that Gary Danielson said he would like to have some banners hanging outside of each door. And the banners would say, graduating class of, and they were in red and black, Central's colors. And so each year, as the children move from one grade level to the next, they take their flag with them and hang it outside of their door. We have also done many things for the staff. We have purchased, we've done luncheons twice a year. We've done gifts for teacher appreciation. We gave them jump drives 1 year with the name of the school on there, York. We've given them little cases to carry their supplies back and forth from home to school. We've bought perennials for them. We've put things in their mailboxes just for encouragement. And in the spring, Wesley does a mission blitz. And so we've gone over and we've done some cleaning in the school, some painting and cleaning of the paneling in the hallway. And we also have people that give of their time to go over to York. We have a group that goes over every Monday and Wednesday morning, and they are greeters at the school, so that when the kids come in, we high-five them, give them a positive comment, and we've enjoyed doing that. We have our Wednesday group also stays and helps to put food in bags that the children take home on Fridays also. And then we have done field day. For the last 3 years, we've helped the PE teacher with field day. So we've done a lot of activities. We have lunch buddies. We have buddies for reading, a lot of fun things that we have done. And what we are going to do next that we're planning, I hope you have heard of the organization called One Sole Purpose. And One Sole Purpose provided shoes for Weller last year. And I went to a meeting about One Sole Purpose in the spring, and so I talked to our congregation yesterday. I spoke in all 4 services yesterday at church and talked to them about York Elementary, a little over 200 students, and the shoes would be $25 a pair. So we are hoping and praying that we will get enough money to purchase the shoes for all of York so that they don't have to use any of the money that they have at this point. And yesterday when I spoke to the congregation, just right before I spoke, there was a song that we sang, and in that song, you probably know this stanza, but it says, We will show we are Christians by our love, by our love. We will show we are Christians by our love. And that's what we at Wesley want to do. We want to share that love with the students at York. Thank you for listening to me. Do you have any questions or anything? Thank you.
I just want to thank you for not retiring.
Oh.
It sounds like you're keeping busy. So.
I am retired.
Yeah, I don't believe it. Thank you very much.
Not tired, no.
Dr. Ritter, your report.
There's a couple things. First of all, I just want to state that we have really outstanding teachers in our system, without question. And every year, we're right at about 100 teachers right now that we're replacing. Many of them retired, but some moving. And we anticipate we'll probably end up with about 125 is usually where we end up as far as hiring of teachers. And we really have had a great response, a tremendous response, so we should have, give you the assurance that we have quality. Today I had the opportunity to, the Commissioner of Education was here, Chris Nicastro, and we had about 6 superintendents from Ozark, Branson, Monette, Joplin, Waynesville, and Willard. And of course, most of our conversation was around Joplin. And just for everybody's information, by the way, CJ, who used to work for us, and eventually Nixon, and ultimately became the superintendent at Joplin, mentioned that he thinks they're going to end up with about 97% of their kids, which is really, and they've been doing some major connections and contacts, and kids staying with kids, and so that's a fantastic response. So things are looking up for them. But our main conversation was around IPSIP 5. It was also around accreditation. It was also around the top 10 by 20, and really having this conversation with Commissioner Nicastro really helped help us understand really what the journey is all about, and feeling much better about it. So anyway, looking forward to continuing to get ready for the new school year, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Questions for Dr. Ritter? I don't believe we have any comments from the public. Okay. We've got 4 reports to hear tonight, 5 reports actually, 4, and some animals to go with. So, Dr. Hackenberg.
Good evening. The Springfield Public Schools Strategic Plan, SP5, identifies the creation of additional choice programming as a key target for improving the graduation rate of Springfield Public School students. The opening of the Wonders of the Ozarks Learning Facility in 2008 was a major step toward the accomplishment of that goal. The 2011 Wolf Choice Program update utilizes the format aligned to the 7 criteria for performance excellence. In this format, items 1 through 6 provide a basic profile of the program itself. Item 7 provides you the results, includes strengths and opportunities for improvement. The Wolf Choice Program update will be available on our district website and has been provided to you through board docs. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Mrs. Sue Dial and Mr. Brian Livingston, our 2 teachers for the Wolf School. They're going to provide you with an overview and some highlights of the program, and then introduce you to some additional friends of theirs. Brian and Sue.
Thank you for allowing us to come and share the Wolf program with you this evening. He covered part of my speech, so you're going to hear a couple of things twice, but that's okay. We have some really interesting things to show you, but before we do that, I want to tell you a brief story of Wolf. Simply, Wolf is a product of your strategic planning process. It's a success story. Several years ago, as a result of ongoing conversations with people in the community, the SPS5 was created to be a roadmap for planning in the district. Included in the SP5 was a provision for providing choice in schools and programs in Springfield. In 2006, the Choice School Research Team was formed to explore school choice in Springfield. Mark Manus led this team, and they visited 18 choice programs across the country. The single program that seemed to catch the committee members' eye was the School in the Woods in Colorado Springs, and Dr. Ritter was already familiar with that program. It was a conservation science program that served 2 fourth-grade classrooms. In the fall of 2006, the Choice Committee recommended the creation of a conservation science program for our district with involvement from community partners. Dr. Ritter met with Mr. Johnny Morris to discuss Bass Pro's commitment as a corporate partner and the opportunity for 2 temporary wolf classrooms housed at the Wonders of Wildlife Education Facility. In November of 2007, 2 teachers were hired, myself and Becky Ziegler, and Wolf opened its doors in August of 2008. We'll be starting our 4th Wolf year, and we're looking forward to moving into our permanent classrooms at the future Wonders of Wildlife Education Facility. And speaking of that facility, at this time, I'd like to introduce to you Misty Mitchell. Misty is the Education Director at Wonders of Wildlife and has been involved in Wolf from the very beginning. She's going to come and speak to the facilities and the partnership between Wonders of Wildlife and Springfield Public Schools. Misty.
Thank you, Sue. And I would first thank Dr. Ritter and the school board for thinking out of the box with the Wolf School and other choice programs. These programs allow children to thrive in different learning environments. I can tell you personally, this program has seen a lot of growth. I have grown just through the program. I find it amazing that kids in this program actually come to me daily during the school year and request to take tests during their recess time. Taking a test during recess when you were in 5th grade was not something I imagined doing, but these children do because we do animal handling and we do things to encourage that. And we're actually going to see some of these kids show off their animal handling here in the future. Well, we're getting ready to start with our new education center, and I brought a plan for it, and we can go over that just a little bit. The new classrooms are going to be 1,400 square feet, and there are 2 classrooms right here. They're double the size of the classrooms now. So these are very amazing, and they actually have a partitioning door so the teachers can work as one big group or as individual. But then WOW will also have classrooms. They'll have their own lunchroom and gym, which is something we've not experienced in our building that we have now. This is a completely secure education facility. Even though this is a banquet facility and a Bass Pro shopping area and a Wonders of Wildlife facility once it opens, this area is completely secure for the children during the day. We'll have fob cards, and we'll have an ability to buzz people in and out during the day like that. This facility is going to be world-class. We're extremely excited. We've done 2 tours of the facility under construction. We welcome any member of the board who's interested in a tour who wasn't able to go on any of the other tours. Give me a call. I would love to show you around and show you our facility, because until you get inside of it, if you look at it on here, it's not as impressive. And if you went, Mr. Lee, when you went earlier, it is now even more. You can see so much more. 6 weeks down the road, Dr. Ritter, we've already got a date, so we'll be able to enclose. We're planning to open this building in December of this year. We actually will hope to move in during winter break. So the kids will start at the program in our facility that we have now, but we will definitely be moving in. So we're very, very excited. Wonders of Wildlife commitment to this program is fully there. Our board is fully on board with this, and we're extremely excited to be involved. And I'd like to introduce Mickey Black. He's the General Store Manager at Bass Pro.
Good evening. She said, I'm Mickey Black. I'm the General Manager of the Bass Pro Shops here in Springfield, Missouri. On behalf of our founder, Johnny Morris, and all of the Bass Pro Shop associates, it's been our pleasure to host the Wolf School for the past 3 years. We work with conservation-based organizations all over the country, and this is one of the finest programs that we've been associated with. Bass Pro Shops is committed to the continued support of the Wolf School. As Misty said, we're in the process of building a tremendous new state-of-the-art facility called the Conservation Education Center, which will house the Wolf School, and as she also said, beginning in January of 2012. We look forward to the continuing the successful partnership well into the future. Thank you all very much.
Mr. President, Board of Education, it's my privilege to introduce to you some of our parents who are highly involved at the Wolf School. And we have a set of those right over here next to me, Lonnie and Stephen Harrell. Their son, Christopher, was in my classroom this year. And Lonnie's going to speak briefly to you about their journey through from private education into Springfield Public Schools.
And they have emphasized briefly, so I'll be brief. And our situation is Christopher is the oldest of 4 children. Of course, when you have your first child going into school, you don't really know what you're doing. So we kind of had a plan and thought we would be sticking to the plan until we started reading Christopher and not our schedule, and realized that he seemed to be growing a little more disassociated and unhappy in the private school situation. I mean, bright kid, academics were great. I mean, he just wasn't fulfilled, couldn't seem to find a passion anywhere. So not only did we come from a private school, but we didn't even live in the district. So we had no idea what our options were until we moved into the district and kind of started looking around. And so on a whim and a prayer, we moved into the SPS district and just we were hoping for better. We didn't even know what it was going to be, but we were hoping for better. And by divine intervention, Christopher got accepted to the Wolf program, because that's what it takes, is divine intervention to get accepted, to get a slot. And the year it has turned all of our lives around. I mean, first of all, you can't believe that it is a public program. And I know you don't need me to tell you how amazing it is, but the growth that comes with having a choice has really, it's turned all of our lives around. So getting ready to have the year end, none of us really wanted to go back where we came from, and started looking for other choice options for Christopher in the public school system, and started looking around, and now he is going to end up at Central. But because of the success of the first choice program, and knowing that once you take a leap of faith, it's not always bad. I mean, all the kids go into that program not knowing who's going to be going and not knowing a soul. And for Christopher to know that, you know what, we jumped off the cliff and look where we ended up. It was the best choice that we ever made, and now we're going to jump off another cliff and totally turn our lives in a completely different direction. So I think overall what I'm here to thank you for are the choices and the power that the choices bring to our family, to Christopher. So thank you. I think Christopher is going to speak.
To give you a little more information, last year we had 9 students outside that were not in Springfield Public Schools that applied. Out of those, 5 were selected through the random draw, and out of those 5, all but 1 chose to stay with Springfield Public Schools. A great testimony to what the program does and what Choice does. My own daughter is a product of Choice Schools. She's over at Central also. She'll be an 8th grader next year, so I would say to you, thank you for that. Now I would like to introduce to you one of our star students, Mr. Christopher Harrell. He's not going to be nervous at all. He is the product of Stephen and Lonnie over here. Great kid, and he's going to tell you a little bit about some of our field experiences.
Hello. As you already know, my name is Christopher Harrell, and as they've covered a lot of it. So, well, as you already know, the Wolf program is an awesome program, but some people, actually a lot of people, feel as if we're just going into the field and goofing around. We're not. Everything we do in the field has a backbone of something we did in the classroom. For instance, our first unit, the water unit, we would go out, do some water testing. We did some kayak and canoeing. All that had a backbone to something we did in the classroom. Before we went out and did the kick nets and everything, we would study the macroinvertebrates. We would learn about the water testing, and I can now identify some of the stuff that I could never have learned to identify in anywhere else I could have gone. And the kayaking and canoeing, which we also want to do, it's another one of those things that seems so, we're just doing it to goof around. We're not. It is a very dependable and reliable form of transportation that many scientists use to get around. It's honestly a lot more convenient and reliable than the motorboat. It doesn't run out of gas, never breaks down.
You can tell Christopher had a really great time this year.
Hey,
he's a great spokesperson.
Christopher, what was your favorite thing in the year? What was your favorite project or favorite subject you learned about?
That is a really tough question. I think that
What were some of the things that you did?
the forestry unit, that was really fun. I learned a lot. You may or may not know who Sue Schubel is. She would work with us on tree identification by leaves, and there is apparently a way to do it with branches that none of us learned. That's probably gonna come to some kids in later years. We just don't have the resources right now. But well, anyway.
Good.
Yeah, and the
salesman.
yeah. Oh well, and one very important part is after we go on a field experience, and so we will come back to the classroom and write about it in our field journals. And documentation is a very important part of any scientific endeavor. So, thank you.
Mr. Hosmer has a question.
They got another question for you. They're going.
Chris, I got a question for you. I know your parents, so. Tell me, Chris, how does this classroom differ from your classroom where you were in 4th grade?
Well,
not just the way it looked, but what was different about it that you liked?
As I said, that in the classroom that we did work on a lot of outdoors type things, stuff we would go out and do in the field. But it is really actually very well. It's kind of hard to describe. If you want to go into and other types of academics such as math and social studies, we do everything pretty much the same. You're going to get all the curriculum done that you did in your normal school.
Mm-hmm.
But there is just this type of pull to the way that we do it all,
Mm-hmm.
related to the outdoors, that makes you just want to learn. That makes you want to learn more.
Okay. Thank you. Sure.
I would just like to say that at the end of the year, Christopher was doing higher level math. The Wolf students were doing higher level math than from the school that he came from. I have no idea how they get it all in a day, but I just would like to say that I couldn't believe that they're doing 6th grade math and nobody. It's higher than anybody that.
Explain something here.
Well, animal handling is just a part of the school, and it's kind of an extracurricular activity, you could say, because it's not required. And so the animals, when they come out, they can actually, the kids have to do a written test. They have to do an oral test with presentations. They have to learn to crate and handle the animals correctly and to be able to do it all on their own. And the idea is they would then be able to come out and go on programs with me. So not only when these kids leave the Wolf School, one of the things is how do we keep them engaged? And so what we've done at Wonders Wildlife is we have a Tomorrow's Naturalist Today program. It was already started. It was actually for kids 13 and up. But we lower the age because I work with these kids for a full school year, so we spend a lot of time with them. Now they come in this program, they can work all through their junior high, middle school, into college and learn. And actually that's how I started my career at the zoo, so I'm highly a believer in this program. So I'm gonna actually introduce you to these students, and they're gonna introduce themselves. They made sure they wanted to do that. So we'll go ahead and let them get started.
And while they're doing this, just remind everybody to look at, in board docs, look at the test scores and the performance data because it's very impressive. All right.
Kendall is a first-year student. This was his first year, so he's 1 year
Go
out.
ahead.
Hi, my name is Kendall, and this is the American kestrel. And you can find them in both North and South America, and they live year-long in Missouri. They live in towns, cities, parks, farmlands, and open country. And you can find them perching on electrical and telephone wires because they like to look down and search for their food. During the
use a crow call, which is one of the two calls used for turkey hunting, and there's also a barred owl call, which I will demonstrate right now. They make the who cooks for you sound, and we do have him over in the corner, so we're going to see if we can get him to respond.
Dr. Ritter? The turkey, okay, I'm sorry.
No, we have the barred owl.
Yeah, I'll come in.
She's going to call the owl, and we're going to see if it will respond.
And then that was the who cooks for you sound, which is their main call. And then here is a more short note of it. And in the classroom, we actually would just stand by, because we have a wall dividing from our animal room. We would actually stand there and call the owl, and it would respond back, and it was really funny. And just the wolf is just a great program all around. So, and we do all kinds of stuff like that all the time. And so, do you guys have any questions?
Where's the owl?
The owl is in that crate right there, and I don't know why.
He must be asleep. We were hoping he'd call back, but it's fun to try.
Yeah.
Thank you, Harper. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so now we've met Kendall, who was a first year, this year's student, and was holding the smaller birds. But now we're going to meet another student who has been out of the program now for a year and a half and has been doing animal handling with us for a while and has progressed to one of our larger animals. And she's going to be able to come out and tell you about him. And the bird's as big as she is.
Hi, my name is Hannah, and this is a turkey vulture. His name is Socrates, and he lives all throughout North America. He lives in the tops of dead trees, and you can see him flying in the sky about everywhere. You can tell that it's a turkey vulture by the way they look when they're flying. They kind of tilt back and forth. They eat carrion, which is a type of dead animal. Their predators are raccoons when they are younger, and then as they get to adulthood, their predators are foxes and wolves, and those are their predators because when they get down to eat the dead animal, they fill themselves up so much that they can't fly. So when that predator comes up, they have to have a defense mechanism. Their defense mechanism is throwing up. They can throw up to 10 feet away.
That's about right, 10 feet.
Go for the leadership first.
You guys have any questions for Hannah?
Is that a pretty heavy bird to hold?
Yes.
Uh-huh.
If you notice, she has a stick
Yeah.
that helps her. When he does fly, her whole body moves with him.
Wow. Very impressive.
Hannah was allowed to participate with Peter Gross.
Where does she go?
It's called baiting.
I'm sorry?
That's called baiting. When the bird does that, it's trying to fly. And if you notice, Hannah hasn't flinched. That big is as big as she is, and it beats her in the back of the head. And she will literally look away and turn back, and you'll never know. To her, it's, seemingly it will be just as smooth as silk, and that's what they're taught to do. So, thank you, Hannah. I started to tell you she participated with Peter Gross from Wild Kingdom at Harvard Middle School. He allowed her, because of her experience with wolf, to handle the animals for that program that they did. They did 3 programs, I think, that day. And he complimented her because she handled the vulture, and it just beat the heck out of the back of her head. And he complimented on her poise and stamina and the ability to just take that and then turn right around and not even miss a beat and go right on talking. So Hannah is a second-year student. So she's been out for 2 years. There are a lot of people that deserve our thanks, but specifically I would like to thank the board and Dr. Ritter for being proactive with your vision, Dr. Hackenworth and Ferba Lofton for their support, Pam Bodine for being our own Radar O'Reilly, Mrs. Kissinger and Annie Wallenmeyer and Teresa Bledsoe for serving on the original team and for all of the ways that they continue to support us, Dr. Stockton for thinking so far outside the box. But most of all, I would like to thank Dr. Pomperine and Mr. Manus for doing their jobs with a level of integrity that is so rare in our society. Wolf wouldn't be here if it weren't for them. And I want to thank them for taking a chance on Becky and me, for giving us a lot of rope, and then trusting that we would have the intelligence to do something really awesome with it, and for always, always, always being at the other end of that rope. Thank you. We're going to open for questions at this time.
Questions?
I do have some questions and some comments.
And feel free to ask questions of any of the people that have been part of the presentation.
What do we have cost figures on what this costs the district in excess of? You got a couple of teachers there, and I know that Bass Pro has provided a lot of support for this program, but do we have an idea of kind of the cost involved for the trips and I'm assuming the district pays for those trips?
Over and above what a child would have in a normal school, we have 2 FTE and a transportation budget of about $9,000. And I would say that the return on your investment is huge.
And that's really not my point, but because I think the program is a great program, and one of the things that I saw in the report is, we've got lots of people wanting to get into this program and not a lot of spaces. We have a program that's 1 year, and you got kids then leaving and hoping they get into something that's going to engage their child as much as this program has engaged their child. So a couple of questions, and they're kind of interrelated, and that is, where do we go from here with this program specifically? And the second question is, and this kind of relates back to the Hillcrest Awards, the Central Awards. It seems to me that a lot of the success and a lot of the engagement is what's going on in the classroom as opposed to where that classroom is or what the focus of that classroom is. That it's about kids being excited about taking ownership of their learning, about learning being done in project-based environment, and about relating their learning to the real world through handling animals or doing all sorts of things. And so my question is, in addition to how we expand this program, is how do we bring what we kind of know works from this program, from Central, from Hillcrest, that into every classroom across the district, or bringing it into a greater extent to every classroom across the district? Because it's wonderful that parents come and say, Wolf is fantastic, but it's kind of sad that parents come and say, Wolf is fantastic, if you know what I mean, because their fourth grader was somewhere, most likely in a Springfield Public School classroom, and their sixth grader is going to be in a Springfield Public School classroom. So, and maybe that's not a question for you, but it's a philosophical question of, this is working, it's great, it's fantastic, and you see these things all the time. You hear people talk about them.
Kick that question upstairs to Dr. Ritter.
Right here, if I may. Misty, am I correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, okay? Now, if you ever been around Johnny Morris, you never know from 1 minute to the next what he's going to do. The original plan for this classroom, or for this, was very minimal compared to what we have now. I'm trying to make this a lot better. Help me here. There we go. All right. These classrooms here are bigger than any classrooms we have in the whole district. They're like 1,500 square feet.
Yeah, 1,400 pieces.
1,400 square feet. Huge. Well, next door are classrooms that basically kids coming from all over the district are going to be able to experience the aquatic center, aquatic holding, experience the reptile, experience a lot of these different things, and can also do that in a classroom setting. Partnering, of course, with, this is all thinking and hoping right now, partnering, of course, with the Wolf program. So that is something that we're talking Here's another one that's kind of interesting. This is a multi-purpose room. This is a banquet room, but these are also things that we can bring large groups of kids in to be able to experience the wolf, and then also have them experience the animals as well. So there's all kinds of possibilities related to that. So this is a phenomenal facility. You need to go see it. It's unbelievable. But anyway, that's one example, and we're still having a conversation about expanding that. So, anything else on that, Misty?
No.
Okay.
2 points, I guess, is that, this is one of the choice programs. Because of science in 5th grade, I'm always interested in how much better the kids do based, with hands-on in 5th grade science using the map, which is not my favorite, but it's at least one measure that we can have. But it really isn't that. It's a popular program. That's good. Kids like it, parents like it. That's a good thing. Then they perform, which is even better than being just popular. Popular is good, but if they perform. But I don't know. I feel like I'm a broken record, but I keep saying the purpose of choice programs in my mind is to find out what's working and take parts of it back to all the other classrooms.
Right.
And if we don't do that, then we're not, to me, serving. Every child in this district wouldn't be as excited as these kids are about this program, because some of them don't care. They're excited about other things. But we know, based on science and what they need to know, that parts of this could be incorporated in every science classroom, and they don't have to be here. They could be in their classroom, or they could be brought here, or we could take some people to them and hire a couple additional people that could go out and do some of these special projects. So to me, that's the exciting thing about choice programs. We find out what's really working, and then we take that and then we do some other choice programs that fit with other kids and their passions and turn them on. And the selection process, I'm going to tell you, is I think works as well as it can. My grandson applied and did not get in. So anybody that thinks because you're a favorite that you get in, he did not get in. He was not chosen. They happened to be a friend of Christopher's, and they, I think did some things together, based hunting, did some things. But it's a process that I think when we have choice programs, that when you say, well, let's just do it everywhere. Well, everybody isn't going to be turned on by that same thing. I just think then the opportunities when we see what really excites kids or translates into achievement, we owe it to the others to take those, and our best salespeople are the students who have gone through that program and be able to tell us what really was exciting about it and what can we take then out to the other, and still have this as our home base for this program. So to me, the purpose of choice and why I was excited about choice is still to come, because I've seen us start choice programs, but I haven't seen the next step where I really want us to go with that, kind of to dovetail into what you're talking about, Andy. And if we have more than one, then we're going to reach more kids, and then they're going to get into the middle school area where I really think we really need to find their passion before they find some other one that isn't quite as positive.
I just would challenge Dr. Ritter and staff to duplicate these MAP scores, these attendance levels, and this parental interest at every building in the district.
Thank you for that challenge.
Yes.
Well, if I could just follow up, I really think there is something to be said for
make that connection.
The way. I don't think it's because these kids. I don't think it's because Christopher just loves handling birds or whatever that turned him on. I think it's that the way that class interacted, and that's not, these are random kids. I don't know how many fourth graders know that they have a big interest in, handling turkey vultures. So, but but I think that the knowledge that, and again, I think if you tie it into Hillcrest, the program at Hillcrest, that we see Mr. Davis about every 4 months win another national award. And you go in and see some of those classes. I went and saw the Central Intelligence class, and you see the interaction of the kids to the teacher in that class, and it's a different way of delivering instructional content. And time again, we see, boy, it really works. It really engages kids, and I think we do ourselves a disservice if we don't take that knowledge and ship it out to the other classrooms around this district in a more intentional way.
I think we are. We really are. It's just that it's not that visible right now, but we are, as far as the engagement is concerned.
And I think that it's twofold there. One is how do we learn from this and translate it, but also how can we expand what we're doing right here? You know, from day one, I thought, how do we make this 100 kids instead of 50 kids? How do we go into 6th grade so that they don't fall off the table when they get out of 5th grade and they continue to build upon that? And that's just learning as we go. And so, I think there's two aspects of how do we translate the positives, because it does work. And I really do think it's the engagement. Anytime, don't look at me like this, but I'd rather exercise playing basketball than exercising in a gym. And you're engaged, you're doing something that you feel better with and all of a sudden you wake up and go, wow, I learned some math skills, and I didn't really know I was learning math or communication skills. And I think that whole engagement and enrichment process is really, really important. And I did have one question for Misty. You're highly skilled, talented in your science. Who's your high school teacher?
I think she's on the board of directors.
That's what I thought.
Good.
I want to get a plug in there just for
I kind of.
Good work. Well, thank all of you, parents, students, feathered friends, Bass Pro folks. Thank all of you for coming tonight, and teachers, and we appreciate the update. It's going to be exciting.
Big thank you to Johnny Morris, too.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Board meeting out there. I don't know if we can pull that off.
All right. Mrs. Kissinger, the July quarterly report.
Dr. Goodman.
All right, Dr. Goodman, can you top that?
Well, I was thinking, and I'm going to have to go back and check the agenda, but this happened on the third quarterly report. There was some fascinating, high-profile, great presentation, and I get to come give this. But I'm going to try.
Good.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to present to you the fourth quarterly report for the 2010-2011 school year. The fourth quarterly report represents the 19th report. I actually counted that up today, so we'll have a celebration at the first when we reach our 20th quarterly report. Following the process that has been laid out in previous quarterly reports, this evening I will be presenting to you an overview of any strengths, opportunities for improvement, areas needing further study, or updates or highlights to previous strengths or opportunities for improvement. And then we'll go through those, and then we'll take questions as it relates to any of the content, whether formally identified per those criteria or additionally that was in the report. So for the fourth quarterly report this evening, we have two areas to take a look at. We have the updates, and we have some identified strengths. Within the updates realm, we want to bring forward the gains by quartile relative to the expected amounts for language arts, reading, and math. And then also an update related to the student-to-classroom teacher ratio, which has been in previous quarterly reports identified as an opportunity for improvement. On the strengths end, looking at some results coming from some survey work, including the student enthusiasm for learning, student perceptions of the environment, faculty perceptions of the environment, and teacher satisfaction with job. First update this evening deals with gains by quartile and expected amounts for language arts, reading, and math. And recall that at the third quarterly report, we had our first look and brought forward gains kind of the first time out of the gate. And so I'm going to just briefly hit the highlights that we pointed out that time, because to translate it out to looking at the end of the year, it looks just a little bit different in terms of how we interpret the pieces, and just to make sure we're on the same page with that. So concepts that we brought forward in the third quarterly report, thinking of gains as we're doing here, is first of all this idea of growth. And when we think about growth, we have two questions that kind of come to mind. One, how much has been gained? And two, is that amount enough? And so if you recall, we used an example kind of related to like a growth curve for a child with weight or height. And so we say, okay, your child weighs 15 pounds. There's the idea of how much has been gained or where they at with status. Is that amount sufficient? Is usually translated with a percentile. So let's say the baby weighs 15 pounds, and that places them at the 75th percentile. I've now been given a little more context to understand that 15 pounds. So that was one idea we shared. Second piece we did also was getting at this concept of gains with performance series, and expressed that according to the documentation from the company and the assessment Scantron performance series, that's best examined with the scaled score. So that's what we brought forward for you. And that the student placement in these quartiles are determined from the beginning of year assessment. So that beginning of year assessment kind of drives the quartile and what the expected amount is per the content for the year. And then finally, related to that is through their own research and through looking across the national sample, Scantron then provides for us an observed mean gains. So instead of saying we expect 100 units of scale score growth across each grade level, each content area, there is some variation based on the grade level, content area, and quartile. So just as a reminder, visual cues help in the reminder. We talked about growth in that way. So one question is the magnitude of growth, and another is a criteria for judging the growth. We stated that Scantron noted scaled score is our preferred measure, and it's important because we have any number of statistics available to use, but that's the one for this. And then this relationship among scores. So the beginning of year scaled score is then looked at, and that establishes the percentile of students in. That percentile then determines the beginning of your quartile. Easy translation from the percentiles to the quartiles is kind of a 1 to 25 area. So students who have a beginning of year national percentile between 1 and 25 are quartile 1, 26 to 52, 51 to 75, 3, and 76 above is quartile 4, and then there are unique amounts per each grade level and content area. So then thought it might be useful to kind of model up and sample some data. So we've got 8 hypothetical students here, and we can see, let me see if the podium's on. So really kind of 3 columns for us to pay attention to here. Oop. Yeah, it's not going to cooperate for me. So column B represents the beginning of year student score, column D, the end of year score, and column E, the difference. So student 1, just under 1,800, went just above 2,100, gained 315. Student 2 right below them actually started out, 86 points higher, but was about 70 points lower for a difference of 155. And so we can go through row by row and kind of see generally some students who were in about the same place, but ended in different places. So the next piece then that the system for us to look at is twofold. One is the BOI quartile. So you can see that I've hypothetically put these numbers together. We've got 2 kids per each type of 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And what I want to point out is that we have this expected gain column right over here dealing with what amount is expected per that placement. So this example is 3rd grade reading. So you can see it's 254 for the quartile 1s, but it's 102 for the quartile 4s. The next step in that process then is to say, let's take the difference of what was gained, column E, against what was expected, column F. And that value is then shown in column G. So that's where the 60.33 comes on student 1. They gained 315. They were expected to gain 254, difference of 60. And so they are at or above expectation. So in this regard, any student who was at 0 or higher on this column G met or exceeded expectation. Student right below, student 2, they gained 155 overall. The expectation was 254. They were just under 100 scale score points below expectation. The reason I'm being a little exhaustive here on this concept is because it's this column G that reflects what we're presenting in the report and that I'm about to go to in the next slides. It's the average amount by quartile, by grade level, that is then shown in our graphs in this update for gains. And so the key point when we look at this is the idea of zero. Because zero, we can kind of consider zero the standard we're looking at. And what we ideally want to see is all columns above zero and none below in that instance. So we're saying at or above expectations means it factors in at the given level where the students are at. So one more contextual piece, and then we'll hop on the results. In visiting with Cabinet, Dr. Ritter had asked the question, do we have a sense of our counts by quartile? And I'd realized that had not been included formally in the pieces provided to you, but I did feel it was an important piece to bring forward. So this reflects for the 2010-2011 school year kind of a distribution of the what percent of students fall in these quartiles for these content areas. So you can see it in the numbers there.
Numbers here.
Yeah, this is legitimate numbers. That's right. So it's a little easier to see in a graph, I believe. And so we can see then at the beginning of year, 28% of third graders fell in quartile 1, 28% in quartile 2, 23% in quartile 3, 20% quartile 4. So to get a sense of, what are we talking about? Do we have 50% in the bottom quartile and 3% in the top? We can see kind of a general lay of the land as to what we're looking at. And so in general, it does kind of assume, if it was evenly distributed, as a normal distribution would do, you would say, the prediction would be 25, 25, 25, 25, right? So in general, we've got some ups and downs, but it's more or less in that way. So now to the results. So language arts gains by quartile an expected amount. So recall from the slide with the hypothetical students, we've taken out the expectation, we've taken what they have gained against what they should have gained, and then averaged it at the quartile level. And so then what we see reflected here, and the pen's not allowing me to do it, but if it did, I would draw a big solid line across zero right there. And that would be our target, is to be at or above gain. And so in the spots where we aren't, or actually let's say the other side first. In the spots where we are, we can then say by how much are we exceeding. So we can look at this chart and say, so are we getting more gain at 5th grade in the quartile 1 above and beyond expectation than anywhere else in language arts? Yes, we are. That is, it's all been standardized in that way to look at and be able to see in that regard. The other consideration is to say, well, at what spots do we see gains not up to zero, meaning not up to the expected amount once factoring out the expected amount? And we see 2 spots, quartile 3, the 4th grade, and quartile 1 at the 8th grade. Now, in the slides that follow, these are scaled the same, and so I point that out because you can kind of consider these relative to the others, and I believe you should have a copy of the PDF version of this in your board docs as well. Reading, there's the table of counts, but it's a little easier to see on the bar graph. And so what we're seeing again here is how are students distributed at the beginning of year by quartiles for reading by grade level.
Is it okay if I stop you?
Please.
Okay, I'm sorry. The quartiles are based on Scantron's internal numbers, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, and so even though we're close to the 25%, this is based on their national means or national averages?
Yeah, the national norming work.
And I've asked you this before, but we're pretty comfortable as a district that that's a pretty good number, that those quartiles are pretty good in terms of being accurate.
Yeah, we have confidence in what they've provided for us.
Okay, thanks.
So then on to the gains piece next. Really an affirming slide for us. This is reading, and we see across all grade levels, across all content areas, all groups met or exceeded the expected amount across the district. And if you recall in the third quarterly report, I said I was going to be a little deliberate about this because this is a new way for us to present and to think about these types of things. And so in many ways, this kind of becomes a baseline for us, a benchmark, if you will. It's our first blush at really saying, what does this look like? And I think it's a highly positive piece to say out of the gate with just beginning this growth piece, we can already see that in the instance of reading, we're meeting and exceeding. And what's interesting in this one is that you can see some of our high values, because remember, we've factored out what they each had to do relative to their own observed mean gains, how it's really spread kind of across different groups. So we see almost exceeding by 60 at 4th grade with the Q1, but then exceeding by almost 50 with Q2 at 3rd grade. Then we could go to 5th grade, we've got 2 at just around 40, and the 8th grade Q4 is around 40 as well. So it's really happening kind of across kind of the board in that regard. Finally, with gains, then it's math. I'm not going to stay on the table, but I will go to the graph to give a sense of what we're seeing there. And I think the thing that's probably maybe most telling from my perspective in comparing these distributions by grade levels across the content areas is the large percentage in quartile 4, really from 5th grade on, where we're seeing almost 40% of the students fall approximately in quartile 4 at the start of the year. When we go to the expected amounts then, we see the following. And the interesting piece from my observations in compiling this data and working it and preparing it for you all is that across the board at each grade level, without exception, quartile 1 is the high water mark across each of the grade levels. When you just, so if you were just looking at quartile 1 through 4 for 3rd grade, quartile 1 meets or exceeds by the most. Same for 4th, same for 5th, same for 6th. That was, to me, somewhat of an unexpected observation to come out of it, that it was be consistently with the lowest quartile students. Now, at this point, I'm going to move into the others, so I want to stop on, I'm going to stop myself per this conversation. So, Dr. Prater.
Well, just a question. Does this say that we're teaching to some of the kids who need the most help well, but we're not challenging the kids who are already functioning at a fairly high level?
Prefaced with the statement of that we're kind of new at this and beginning to study it, potentially, yes.
But could that also mean there isn't as much possibility for gain at that top level?
Quartile. The test may max out of you.
Well, the test
factored in, though, right?
Yeah, we have taken that into account. So, you know, if you think
they don't have to gain as much to get above the 0.
Right.
So if we come back on, let's use this one right here.
Right.
Yeah.
But they don't have to gain as much. The expected gain
is 100. Yeah.
Which I think Dr. Prater's point is right on. It. I mean, it seems like we need to look at that. What appears at first glance to be,
right,
let's pat ourselves on the back for that. Maybe at second glance is let's look into that more deeply, because there's a delivery issue of or where you focus, I guess.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
I think that's what you have, is you have the data to show where you need to target.
Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, that's the point.
Right, we haven't had this data before,
right.
So it's a nice thing to...
And a quick question about these bar graphs, and I have lots of issues with these bar graphs and other bar graphs. Would it be more helpful to us as a board if that was instead of just raw numbers? Because 47 doesn't mean anything to me on the 4th grade, first quartile.
Okay.
I mean, above 0 certainly means something. Would a percentage, how much above 0 that is, would that be more indicative?
So the percent gained beyond expectation. So if the expectation is 150, the average gain was 200, we take what percent is 200 of 150?
And I just throw that out. It just seems to me that I don't know if getting raw numbers is a better way of showing that. Or
I can't speak if it's viable, but I can take a look at it and see kind of how it works out.
And I don't want to interrupt, but that's one of my concerns. Is we've got this incredible data, and what's there, the raw data, but explaining that to my mom, that this is a good thing, it's telling us good stuff, and the general public, that concerns me. How do we translate that into, I'll call it layman's terms, to understand, hey, we're succeeding and we're doing, and here's areas we need to improve and why, so that they understand it. I mean, I'll just be honest, it's difficult for us to understand all the data and the details. trying to explain that to the public, that it's good. I mean, somehow where we need to boil it down into a USA Today snippet, and here's why it's good, and what that is. And I don't, I mean, you're the guru in understanding it, but it's unbelievable data. It's great data, and I think it's really, really important. I want to get it to the public for them to understand what it's telling us, and for them to understand it instead of glazing over like we do sometimes, I know, depending on the depth of the data. So that's more a rhetorical question than what are you going to do, but that's just one of my concerns is it's positive data. How do we get it out, and how do we market what this thing tells us?
Right, and I would front load even before that is we are facing and having that same conversation as it relates to staff. And so how do we work with principals and teachers, because it does represent a shift, and what's the most effective way to make sure that message is translated, it's understood, and then to check with it and say, are we all tracking as to what we're saying? So I recognize the challenge, and I will attempt to welcome it.
I interrupted your data delivery, so go right ahead.
Any more comments on the gains piece here?
Well, just to follow up on Jared's, I think one of the wonderful ways is reporting this to parents who actually can see and say, here's where my kids started out, here's where they ended up, here's what the expected growth is, and they met that expected growth, or they didn't meet that expected growth. And having that actual data to see that growth student by student, I think is key as well.
Just from a board member's perspective, as these questions come to us, like, so what are you doing? What are you doing about these kids that aren't achieving? I mean, very generic kind of approaches. For us to have the confidence to say and to know that this process is happening, and I think the comment you just made about how you're taking it then to the teachers and staff is really, I don't want to say that's all I need to know, but that gives me great confidence to be able to stand in front of a group of folks who are interested in knowing what we are doing as a district, and as opposed to showing them statistics. Right. And some may be very interested, and some parents may really want to drill down, but I'd say, the general population just want to know where we are on this kind of process, and you just don't see this very many places. So.
Thank you for the feedback. And this is a little unconventional, but I'm going to go ahead and do it just to solicit it. We have learned that feedback matters, and so in regards to your comments, does something like this type of layout, now you wouldn't be seeing all the other kids, but if you saw your student, they started, here's how much they gained, here's what they expected to gain, and here's where they were to it, does that boil it down? Does that simplify it? Does that potentially assist?
Yeah. I think the whole issue is we're moving it to a different, to use an old term, paradigm. That was an old term, I know, but I still talk with parents based on my grandchildren's age, and they're still talking grades.
Yep.
My student got all A's. Oh, what did they do and these are intelligent people with intelligent kids, and we're given. So I think, we have to work with our staff first to talk, and they're giving the tests, they're teaching the things, they're seeing the gains, but then how do we get with parents to still get to that level when we now have data? Based on our, we've got some things that individually, and so how do we do that so that they can start talking that way and looking at the achievement gains and seeing language arts is still a real issue. They're reading well, but they're not writing well, or something based on this, our series. So I think that is a challenge. I'm not sure that's your challenge. I'm not sure who it is, but I think the staff is first, and then they're the ones that talk to the parents the most. How do we get them talking about that and looking at that rather than they got an A, B, C, or D? Because I'm telling you, 75% of them still talk to me about grades. Oh, they got all A's this year. Well, what exactly does that mean?
Tell me what they learned.
They're doing fine. Well, we have more than just doing fine information for them. I mean, to me, we have excellent information that can be focused on down to specifics that somehow we can't do professional development for parents and require it, but how do we exactly do that? Because we have the information now. And to me, it's very powerful in our whole learning thing, and that's the piece that I think there's still a question out there. Maybe somebody's figured that out, but I'm not sure. They have, because we have a generation that was still thought about grades.
It might be a case of where I discuss this with the parent advisory and see what they want.
What would do it,
yeah. Because one thing I want to mention here is that I think Ms. Twitty is right. I think it's hard to explain, but we're far more scientific. We're far more scientific now than we were a year ago. And each of our teachers is really drilling down, and it's amazing. So I'm not surprised by the outcome. I'm anxious to get the MAP test results to see how that aligns with what our findings is here. But I do think we're going to be surprised. Going to feel good about it. So, and I think a lot of it has to do with our scientific approach to data. Go ahead.
Okay, one additional update. And this was, as noted in the report, to a previously identified opportunity for improvement. This measure has been identified as an opportunity for improvement in previous quarterly reports, and so we bring it forward. We have the student-to-classroom teacher ratio per the DESE data and the data available in that way. In this instance, Springfield Public Schools is blue, as we customarily are. And the goal in this case is a little non-traditional, that we actually want to be down. The goal is to drive down here. And so the data lays out relative to the others and in our own longitudinal history. We can see for the most recent update, and I did point out in the report, but I'll just make note here, this does reflect the 2009-2010 school year. There's a year lag on this data being available from the state, so we won't get 10-11 till next year. So 9-10 was at the same level as far as the overall ratio as 08-09, and that was level, as you see for us there. But the reason we had identified it as an opportunity for improvement previously and remains so is that that is the highest. Usually we want to be highest, but not in this case, relative to all the comparables, and so we bring that forward this evening. Moving into the strengths, our strengths this evening were come off of our MSIP surveying results. As a district, and I've expressed this before, but I'll reiterate it here, we have self-determined and elected ourselves to annually give the MSIP survey for faculty and students. However, that survey does exist in its truest form to inform the MSIP accreditation process. So this year, when we formally went through the MSIP accreditation process in the fall, we had to administer the survey. No problem, because we're used to administering the survey, but the difference was it was done in the fall, and previous rounds had been done in the spring, and did want to point out that temporal aspect to the data. So, student enthusiasm for learning. What we've done with student enthusiasm for learning is we have aggregated the enthusiasm questions, and they're noted in the report. If you'd like to see them, or I can pull them up on the PDF. We've aggregated this question of I like going to this school across all levels, across all of the units in this case, and so on. And partial regional cohort, we call it partial in this case because all regional cohort members' data was available with the exception of Willard. Willard's data wasn't publicly posted and available, so we've got all but one. And then you can see we've now brought in all of our other districts. So we are identified as a strength in this case because we are exceeding the majority of comparable districts. Essentially, we're only with Rockwood is just under 1% ahead of us. So there's one piece. And then the second piece is that you can see we see that kind of broken out by level as far as the percent. And these percents reflect agree and strongly agree. And then to get at the trend piece as well. So given that, as I just prefaced that we've been annually given this survey in the same way, here we see the trend aggregated together across the years in this way. And so we had been clipping along at about 1% or so increase, and we can see that increase was just under 3% from 2009-10 through 2010-11. Student enthusiasm for learning. Similar to that is the student perception of the environment. Student perception of the environment takes identified questions that get at this idea of the environment and aggregates them together. However, we use different questions because there's not parallelism across the surveys across the levels. So we can only aggregate at the given level. So this one we have to compare elementary versus elementary, middle versus middle, and high versus high. And when we do that, kind of across there, we can see our performance is right in line with others. But it's when we go to this trend piece, we can see this upward kind of movement in trend in terms of aggregating the results across these questions together. And, you know, I think maybe the one of most note, or that caught my attention in the preparation of this, was the middle school side, having gone from 53% to 62% in a 4-year span. It's almost 10%. Mr. Lee?
Define, and I'd make sure I remember what's meant by environment. Or
Absolutely.
What's the component,
Well,
what
we're
does
thinking the
environment mean?
learning environment, essentially the kind of the school setting.
Classroom.
Yeah.
just the
Well,
whole-
it's
I don't want you
it's
to
a
go
little bit
into
of both. Yeah, I'll just bring them up.
Safety, things like, okay, I mean, so that's a broad term. Okay. I didn't mean for you to go all back.
That's okay. So there's the elementary questions.
Teachers care about me.
And middle high. Similar to the student perceptions of environment, we also have faculty perceptions of the environment. We attain these results in the same way through the MSIP surveying process, and we make these aggregations the same way as just previously noted. What's interesting with these on the faculty perception side for environment is, and we've done this in the past, is that we have exceeded all districts, including Rockwood in this case, which is always a nice thing to have happen, and we can see that value is around 90%. There is an additional piece to this is when we get that that we are reporting for you in the previous one, percent agree, strongly agree, but these survey questions are made up of 5 responses: strongly agree, agree, neutral, disagree, strongly disagree. And what was really positive in taking a look at these results was the intensity of the agreement. So in other words, the blue of our respondents versus the blue of others that strongly agree. So we can see that we're at 56% of faculty strongly agree with the aggregation of these environmental questions, and I guess the closest to us would be Rockwood at under 5% there. Additionally, we do have a trend piece, and the thing to point out here is that we do see 2 downward points. However, we are still exceeding the majority. Well, we're exceeding all, as far as this year's results, of the comparable districts. And so it does give kind of a sense of where we've been. That value is about just under 1.5% down from its high in 08-09, but you can see it's more or less in line kind of with where it's been across the trend. Final piece, teacher satisfaction with job. Like the environment for student and faculty, as well as the I like going to school, we aggregate the survey questions together for an overall value. This question reflects, or this measure reflects 2 questions, and I can't quote them off the top, but they are worth sharing, so I'm going to just pull them up real quickly. Excuse me. Okay, I usually look forward to each working day as a teacher, and if I had a chance to choose all over again, I would still choose teaching as a career. So when aggregating those results together, we see the following. And so in this instance, only Rockwood surpasses us in aggregation. And again, going out to this idea of the intensity of it, we can see our strongly agree is right in line with Rockwood's at 54%. The difference is they had a couple percent more on the agree side than we did, 33 versus 35. And then when we go to the trend, we can see that that value is down from the 09-10 and 08-09, but it is back in line with 05-06 through 07-08. In conclusion then, this evening we've brought to you within the quarterly report identified updates as noted and strengths. Be happy to take any questions or answer any items you may have if you want to go back to gains or within any of the surveying aggregations.
I just have a quick request that, and we've talked about this, I've talked to Dr. Ritter with this about this with you, and that is, if somebody could come to us at some point in time and with information about how that performance series is going to be dropped down to parents in a meaningful way and then pushed over to students in a meaningful way, so that they can start to take ownership a lot more of where they are, what their growth is, where their issues are, and that parents can do that. I've talked to Anita, I've talked to you, Matt, about this as well, but I really would like for us to kind of see what that next step is going to be with the performance series and how we're going to make it more accessible to parents and then students.
We're having that conversation. In fact, Dr. Goodman has done some research here in the last week. I think it's been the last week, talking to different vendors and different organizations to see what we can do there. And so maybe you want to share a minute on that, what you're finding.
You'd like me to right now?
Yeah, just
sure.
briefly.
So we just had put out a feeler to our current vendor on performance series of Scantron. And I guess maybe as is customary in this day and age, they've changed their name to, I think it's Global Scholar now, and they're part of the whole Pinnacle suite, and that's a whole other thing, but who knows if the name will change, but it probably would. And so we laid out this idea, of kind of a clearinghouse of resources, if you will, that were in alignment with objectives, with major instructional goals, with curriculum. And essentially what we learned is that theoretically, yes, something could be kind of pieced together to have a one-stop shop where parents and students could go to get the supplemental things. But in practicality, what it appears that I've found that the vendors have is the shell, or to extend the metaphor, almost like a warehouse. So we could buy the warehouse space, but we wouldn't have the products in there. So from their perspective, their response is those can then be developed by the district, which from our perspective is saying that's an awful lot to develop. It'd be nice if they were available, and they said, we understand, but that such a thing isn't available. That was a quick
there yet. That's a
5-minute call last Thursday afternoon.
Well, and this goes to what I brought up again last week, is we have this phenomenal data now. What's our plan to use this effectively to improve our achievement? And that kind of actually jumps out of your lap into Dr. Hackenworth and Dr. Harrell's lap as to...
It's actually in all of our labs.
Well, yeah. And share the labs.
Yeah, and I can give a response to that. I mean, we did administer for faculty at the end of the school year, coming off of some work on the Educational Services side in conjunction with Dr. Ritter on this idea of what is our vision for the effective use of data as a district. And so we worked on that vision, we refined that vision, and kind of got it pretty clear. And then we determined we needed to take a measurement relative to, or a needs assessment, if you will. Where are we at in regards to these ideas? And so we then surveyed out staff at the end of the year, and we have that on our to-do list for this summer, is to crunch those numbers to inform the next steps, to identify what are the needs and what do we need to do first and foremost, because we really legitimately, I don't think, have a perspective of that across the system to know, is it an issue across the board with maximizing performance series results to inform your planning, or is it just in certain pockets, or is it just at certain grade levels? And so we didn't feel we could make an honest, good faith effort to plan and respond accordingly without having the knowledge. So we've done the survey. We need to analyze it and then make the plan off of there. And so that is a work in progress.
Staff response was phenomenal too.
The other interesting thing is what's up with a district like Hazelwood, who, I mean, obviously student satisfaction, student enthusiasm are low, teacher enthusiasm is low. Everything sort of, is that a financial issue with the district? Is that a leadership issue with the district? What causes those things to tail off when we compare our district to a district like Hazelwood?
There's a lot of answers to that.
Yeah.
I really don't. I haven't studied it, but I know Hazelwood has a lot of transfers coming in from the St. Louis system, and so there's some of that. There's a high mobility going on there. I know there's a lot of. As far as teacher tenure isn't nearly as long as well. They tend to be a pass-through district, so there's a number of things that...
Well, I know that you all are looking at best practices in places like Rockwood and maybe best practices in other districts like Hazelwood, so I think that the ability to compare us like that is...
I would just add one response to that. What's interesting when you look at our comparables and ourselves demographically in terms of size and free and reduced lunch rate. Hazelwood and North Kansas City are really about the closest to us as far as number of kids and what percent are receiving free and reduced lunch. With Rockwood, we're comparable on the size, nowhere near on the free and reduced lunch. The regional cohort is actually, in aggregate, but there's no there. And then Columbia is, maybe almost 8,000 to 10,000 students less, but comparable on the free and reduced lunch rate. So it's interesting when I take a look at the results, I've noticed that same observation, yet they are somewhat similar to us in terms of, how many students they're delivering instruction to, working with, to bring through the program.
Well, thank you. We probably beat this one to death. Do you
I'm
want
sorry.
to move on?
Okay.
Just want to beat it some more.
I want to beat it
Okay,
just a
go ahead.
little more, because I don't know if I got an answer to where we're going with this performance series. I mean, we stopping with the teacher? I mean, is that?
Well, we're still
I think
working
he
the
said
teacher.
you're going to present. You're going to look at a plan over the summer, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a sense of that. We can get some of that out of the survey itself, and I think the connection kind of to your question is tied there is then what becomes the next step. So if we think about what the online assessment system kind of the response, what it was a response to, it was intended to provide more meaningful, tangible data, evidence, results that teachers could use to inform their instructional work. One piece of that is, as we've seen, to be able to get down to the objective level, or to know these are the next 3 things in reading, and then they've put some resources in there as far as study guides, answer tests, or answer keys, those types of things, parent letters, so on and so forth. And so when we approach the initial deployment and implementation of the system, that's how we approach that, was to say, how do we deliver this out to the teachers? So that's where we feel we're kind of at a spot now to say, now what? Now that the thing has been deployed, now that we can generally speak the language and we understand what we're talking about, where do we go? So yeah, that's on the radar.
The reason I asked that is because it seemed like that's kind of where we're at now. We've gone down to the teachers, and the teacher can look at her classroom and see what each individual student's doing, but I don't know that we're getting it down as a parent of a 3rd grader going into 4th grade. So I've got some experience with this first performance series. I don't think it's gotten down to the parents, and the parents having the ability to access that and to see where issues are and where issues aren't, so the parent can effectively co-teach with their child's teacher, and then eventually where the student can start taking ownership. We watched a presentation in Columbia of the Kansas City. I think I gave you the name of it. And they seem to have something very similar where, parents and kids can actually go onto their own profile and pull up their test, pull up study guides. Parents can do that, pull up what specific problems this kid is having, your child is having, pull up study guides, pull them down, and again, effectively kind of co-teach, which as a parent, I think it's so important to not just kind of rely on that A grade or B grade, but to know specifically where your child is struggling and what are some avenues that you can have to help in that regard. And so I would hope that this wonderful data can be filtered down to where it needs to be, which is parents and then students.
Can parents get their kids' scores?
Yes. Through hard copy print reports.
Okay.
Right, the raw scores. Yeah.
Okay, so they do get it.
The score, yes.
But not the objectives and strategies. Okay.
Thank you. Do we need a break or keep going?
I'm keep going.
Okay. Dr. Hackenworth again, Title I.
You want the agenda back?
Oh, I think you skipped one, didn't you?
Bond status. Sorry, Scott. I wasn't ignoring you. I did skip one.
Mr. Wendt.
Thank you. Keep yourself straight and true here.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Dr. Ritter. It's my pleasure to present to you the quarterly update on the 2009 bond. We will start with the air conditioning projects, as I usually do during the nice warm weather that we're having currently. Jared and Reed are projects that we had air working this past year. You'll notice in the report they have not been completely closed out as we're working through some tweaking in our commissioning process on those projects. I believe it was Mr. Everest that used the term cutting edge earlier, and I would say that the control systems that we use in our projects today definitely would fall along the cutting line edge. And the commissioning process that we go through to make sure that our equipment is functioning the way it should be, that we get the efficiencies we need. One of the things as we work with our controls is not only our systems need to be standalone at the sites, but also being able to control them centrally from GSC. And as I mentioned, not only the energy management component of that, but as we deal with troubleshooting as we work with projects. At Boyd, here's a picture of some work going on this summer. We're at 90% completion of the demolition, our coring and cutting at 50%. One of the challenges we came into in the Boyd project was the discovery of a false ceiling above the computer lab, which limited some space. The engineers and contractor are working through a resolution of that, but the project is on schedule. As we look at the Robertson, here's a picture of Robertson. The demolition is almost complete there. We did run into some hidden asbestos that we had to have removed so they can complete the demolition in that area. Ductwork is on schedule. Our piping and electrical is slightly ahead of schedule on that project. Roundtree, our demolition is 90% complete. Blower coils are hung on the first and second floors. Electrical transformers in place. They're working on the installation of the feeders. The gas service has been upgraded, and the project is ahead of schedule there. York Elementary, the demolition's at 80% complete. Our electric installation is on schedule. One of the challenges that we have there is we've been notified that a few of the pieces of equipment that are scheduled for in the corridor have been held up in shipping, will be coming a little later, which will force us to install some of that equipment on a second shift once school starts. And as I refer to the schedule here, I'm really talking about the construction schedule component. We won't have air conditioning at these sites at the start of school. The construction schedule call for getting the bulk of the work completed so that we can get students back into those facilities, and then the contractors will continue doing the other work to get the systems up and functioning. And the big issue also is making sure that come October, mid-October, that we have heat in those facilities as well. The remaining air conditioning projects that we have are Sunshine, Phelps, and Teft. The Sunshine project will be coming back probably this next month with a recommendation for a selection of a new engineer for this project, as the previous engineer did not want to partake in a redesign of this project. And then we'll follow that up with the Phelps and Teft projects. The Hillcrest High School project, where the plans are complete for this project, and just as a brief overview, you can see on the site plan where the new FEMA safe room will be situated, and that will be used as the cafeteria and combined into a new kitchen that will be a renovated space in the lower level. We also have, apologize, Dr. Hackenworth, don't mean to hit you there. We also have where the elevator will be located on the Hyper facility. Other work that's not demonstrated on this site plan would be the restroom renovation work and the domestic hot water and cold water piping within the facilities. This project, as I mentioned, the plans are complete. We're doing our internal reviews of those plans as we speak, and the plans are being sent to FEMA for their review. One of the things we're looking at with our bidding schedule, initially we had anticipated bidding Westport, then Hillcrest, then Jeffries, and it looks, pending approval from FEMA, that we'll be shifting those around a little, and that Hillcrest will probably go out first, followed by Westport, and then Jeffries. Here's just the diagram of the FEMA safe area. You can see the cafeteria seating area. One of the challenges that represented in this project was how you attach a FEMA safe room to an existing structure. And that was quite a challenge, and the architects came up with this space here to be able to pull those together without causing problems and to meet the specifications for FEMA. Here we just have a rendering of what that space will look like. As we look at the Westport project, let me start with the site plan first. There's a few things that were brought up during our design process and things that were mentioned by community, and as we've gotten through with the design committee and staff, is looking at some of the traffic congestion that was a problem in this neighborhood. You see Golden at the bottom of the screen here, which basically just would get completely jammed up with parent queuing and that. So one of the things that was brought up was the need to really work on how we were going to improve that during the design process. So one of the ways of doing that was to actually, let me point out down here is where our current offices are. One of the things, obviously, when this becomes a K-8, the two small offices were not going to be sufficient. That needed to be changed as well. So it led itself to putting the new offices and a new entrance, which actually was orientated to the park. So it also allows with traffic flow, either coming in Lincoln or up Westport Park Road and coming up through the property here and then down and out. So it gives us a lot of flexibility. In the plans we had identified and the parks had approved a connection potential through to Hilton. At this point, the city's asked us basically to kind of put that connection on hold as they're dealing with some of the apartments that are going through planning and zoning now. And if that happens with the additional traffic from that, they're asking that we consider holding off on this connection until they make improvements on Hilton. So we'll take a look and keep you posted as we move through on that as well. Oops, sorry. And some of the other issues as we looked at the Westport property, one of the other things that came up from the community was keeping the elementary and the middle school students separated. And as we looked at doing that, here at the top of the drawing, here is the current main entrance to the Westport facility, and so the two current offices here. So as we looked at that and tried to figure out how this would work in keeping those areas separated, this space currently right here is the all-purpose room, our current kitchen and the all-purpose room. And so as we looked at how this was going to work and separate it, we needed to take the library, which was currently here, and get it into a central location. As you look at this plan, if you were to draw a line through the plan here, we basically have the elementary area up in this area, and then this is middle school here. So we look at this as a core space area through here. So what we've done is we've taken what was the library here, which needed to be expanded as it would be elementary and middle school, with renovation taking that kitchen, which was going to come out, and taking the stage area out, opening this up, this becoming the library. So middle school students would not need to go through an elementary wing in order to get to the library. And the other thing that this did as we switched the building around and put the entrance here facing the park is it allowed us, as we put the new kitchen and the serving areas, one of the things we've learned in other designs, especially as we deal with the K-8, is with only having a single serving area, it really, the amount of time from when the first students start eating to when the last students are served, it's a wide spread. So to compress that schedule, what we've done in this design is put an elementary serving area where the elementary kids will be able to be served here and eat in the new all-purpose room here, and the middle school students would be served through this side of the kitchen and seated out into the commons area here. So those are some of the things that we've looked at to make this design work better as the K-8 and meet the needs of both the community and staff. We have basically, as we're finishing tweaking these things, we have FEMA is reviewing the portion of the plan which is dealing with the safe room, and we hope to get that back soon. We do believe with these tweaks and things we've done to make this a better project that we would anticipate that there's a chance the price will be higher than what we had originally planned for in our budget process, and we'll work through that as we get more information. The Jeffries project, as you see here, the narrow site we work with on Jeffries. I want to put this slide up here. This is where the new safe room, gym, and office area will go for Jeffries. But while we have this slide up, I'll point out this bus lane that you see represented here is a different item you have coming up later this evening. So I just want to point it out while we have a picture up here on the screen. This is for a bus lane. This project is coming together well. As I mentioned, this would be the last of the 3 that we would anticipate putting out. And again, FEMA approval of the safe room is another step to getting that completed. Again, here's some from previously seeing some of the artist renderings of how that will look with the new face on it. The Glendale High School project, this is dealing with the electrical and the technology infrastructure upgrades. Some pretty exciting pictures here for you to look at as we look at transformers and switchgear. I do just want to mention, though, that the coordination effort in this project was very tight. We've had several scheduled outages through this building, and just how the different departments and everybody's working together to make that happen. Things are on schedule, and that project is going very well. In technology, just the slides that to show where the training, we're at 40% on phase 1 of the training, 35% in phase 2, and on the smartboard installations at 52%. And just a couple of pictures showing smartboard installation happening at some of our sites. Mr. Green has done an outstanding job with his staff on keeping their website up to date on the progress of those projects. And with that, I would answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Webb? Very good. Thank you very much. Lots going on. All right. Dr. Hackenworth, now it's your turn.
It's about the same report we had last time.
The Missouri School Improvement Program Standard 8.1 and Board of Education Policy IM require the goals of all programs and services to be reviewed biannually by the Board of Education. The 2011 Title I Program Evaluation Report utilizes a format aligned to the 7 criteria for performance excellence. In this format, items 1 through 6 provide a basic profile of the program. Item 7, the results, the strengths, and opportunities for improvement. The Title I Program Evaluation Report will be available on our district website. It's been provided to you through board docs. Brian Hubbard, Director of Title I, is here this evening to answer any questions that you might have regarding this program evaluation report.
Questions? Dr. Frederick.
Hi. I have a couple questions, and certainly want to start this out by I have a little additional information about this program since at one time I worked with this program. But I think my biggest question for you is in looking through some of the assessment that you utilize to assess how the program's doing, I'm just a little curious about why we're not seeing performance information in this. I know that one of the things that whenever I was working with the district, and then since that time, I guess the number one question I get from community would be how are Title I schools doing versus non-Title. I know that's a very challenging answer to give because there's so many pieces and parts of the Title I program. But with performance series, since you can disaggregate out by socioeconomic status, are there some plans to look at performance series and incorporate that, or perhaps even scaled scores, so that you can kind of look at a comparison Title I, non-Titles?
Definitely, and I've talked with Dr. Goodman about that multiple times. One of the things we've also talked about was using the quartile data. That way you're comparing apples to apples. Right now it's a little difficult with how the state reports other school districts. A lot of times they're reporting it by free and reduced lunch subgroup, which we have that same subgroup. However, we have title and non-title free and reduced lunch, so it's a little difficult to compare to other districts. But definitely with what we have with performance series, we have lots of great data. And the thing that excites me about that is with the quartile data, being able to look at those quartile 1 and 2 kids, which is really the majority, if not all, of the Title I students, and be able to compare the different subgroups from title to non-title within those quartiles. So I think it's really exciting. The other thing that we're also trying to do is for any assessments that we have in Title I that we're currently giving that the district doesn't have on their assessment calendar, we're going to be working with IT to have a data collection point for the teachers to also allow us to get that into our Cognos database to be able to run the reports. In addition, we have the eSchool Plus, which is more like the student database, and we'll be able to flag kids not only Title I, but when they entered Title I, when they left, was it for math or reading or kindergarten push-in, whatever delivery method we used, and a little bit more specifics. That way, in the future, we'll be able to provide a lot more data, and I'm really excited about it. But at this point, we're kind of getting to the point where for this program evaluation, we were just getting into that, and we're just working with the IT department and the accountability department to be able to do that.
And I think this kind of goes back to the discussion we've had earlier about, I think with our quarterly report and the quartile reporting, we're almost at an accelerated. I mean, we've accelerated
Right.
from just looking at scaled scores to now looking at the gross and then looking at the quartiles. So as working within that program, can you give us a sense, can you give me a sense of if we're just looking at performance scaled scores?
Right.
That was what we first started out with, looking in terms of student performance. Can you kind of give an idea
Sure.
or some thoughts on if you look at Title I school performance reading, language arts, math, performance scaled scores versus our non-title schools, how's that looking?
Just in general, I mean, I'd love to pull that data off and be able to send it to you. I know that I have looked at it, and across the board, on average, Title I schools are going to be performing a little less on the performance series across all the grade levels than the non-title schools for each of the content areas. Normally, they're starting as far as scale score, probably around 50 points lower. And depending on the grade level, it could fluctuate where they're ending up. Fairly similar as far as staying that same pattern with the end of the year, or it could be in some grade levels where there's a bigger gap between them at the end. So it's something that I'd like to be able to pull off and be able to show you that report.
And it might be something that until you're to that point of looking at the quartiles, which, like I said, that this is accelerated learning
Right.
statistics of what performance can tell us, but just the simple scaled score to look at, or even the gains. I think we can do gains now
Right.
with that.
Definitely.
Just to kind of, so that would help then whenever those community questions come forward. How are Title I students doing? How are the schools doing? How are we doing as a district with our increasing rate of free and reduced lunch? As a very simple way to say, look, this is how we're doing.
Right, and I can definitely get that to you, and I think we'll even have the capability to provide some initial reports by mid-year for this coming school year with the quartiles and get a little bit more in-depth with it too. But for right now, I can give you the scaled score comparisons.
Okay, and so you can do that for the 2 years that you're evaluating in this report.
Sure.
08, 09, 9, 10. Are those your 2 years that you're coming forward with tonight?
In 08, 09, I'd have to look at Matt.
Because you do a biennial report.
The beginning point will be end of year 08, 09.
Okay.
Right.
And then
Okay.
going forward 3 times a year.
Okay.
Since I think 08, 09 was the first year to implement performance.
And I noticed a couple times that you referred to not having some of the assessment data for 10, 11 available at the time of
Right.
this report, but actually that would be included in your next biennial report. So it's really not something that, I mean, we will see it in the future. We
Right.
necessarily don't have to see it tonight.
Okay.
Question and a comment. The growth comparison on the wonder years, I'm on page 9, I think, of mine, saying that this data represents a sampling of children enrolled in Head Start are not receiving services, and then it gives the Dial 3 score, beginning and ending Dial 3 scores. And you look at that and you see that wonder years significantly outperformed either Head Start or no services. Are we comfortable that that's in any way scientific, or is that just anecdotal? We got some numbers, and here's what the numbers showed.
Well, we didn't have the full sample for all of the students at Head Start, or attending Head Start, or no services means that we screened them and they did not attend either of those services. Basically, we were confined to the screenings that we had done here in the district that we knew of. One of the next steps would be to talk to the director of Head Start and make sure that we have, if possible, all of their data from the Dial score. What would be great is working with the other early childhood programs and finding some common ground, because right now we have the Dial 3 that we're using in our district. Head Start also uses that, so that's really the only common ground that we have, because for those kids that are coming in and getting screening, we do have that for 4-year-old and 5-year-old. However, it would be great if in Springfield we had something that would be that common denominator to be able to measure growth, to see how we are compared. But unfortunately for this, we took what we did have, which was all of our wonder year students' scores, and then we had it varied by year as far as the number that we had for Head Start, or the ones that screened and then decided not to attend.
Right. It's kind of struck me that maybe we need to be a little more, try a little more to see whether we can make this more scientific as opposed to a kind of a guesstimate, which kind of what it appears to be. And then the comment I have, I guess, follows up on what Dr. Frederick said. And again, maybe this is an MSIP, and like we talked about at our retreat, and we're already comparing apples to oranges. But we have a quarterly report on performance series with some of these figures, and then we have a Title I report, and it's like we got two different languages, and I'm looking at different numbers, I'm looking at different patterns, I'm looking at different data points, and I guess as a board member, it certainly would be nice to kind of see that. And again, maybe it's just what audience this is for, as opposed to, but having these things right together kind of shows you we got reports on two different things that are just kind of wildly divergent, I guess, is the thought that I had when in reading.
I would assume that question was, I thought about the same type of thing, but my real question would be, surely you all are thinking about the same kind of thing, because this is what you do every day.
Right.
And so if this is a piece that comes forward in a report, in other words, I don't want to be insulting and say, we're thinking of this, how come you're not, when we know, and I think when we go down into the next steps and what you're recommending, what you're wanting to do, is just for us to know, okay, how are you going to do this?
Right.
So that you can deliver the information that we're needing.
I think following up Mr. Hosmer's comment about the wonder years, and it may not be totally scientific, but I think it does reinforce the point that early childhood dollars spent pays off. I mean, if you just look at no services compared to wonder years, and maybe Head Start's not exactly what the statistical sample that you want, but I think as we move forward in this whole MSIP process, as we move forward of 10 by 20, as we move forward with the whole vision of the state of Missouri, I think data like this that we can document, and I know this is federal funds, but still, it still supports early childhood development. And we got 22 classrooms now. maybe we need 50. I have no idea what the number is.
We'd like
I
as many as
understand,
we
but
can.
and I know that that's not doable right now. But I just really want to reinforce that that's well spent dollars.
And can I jump on that and say, why don't we have 50? We look at reading recovery, we look at Wonder Years, and they're phenomenally successful programs. Is it lack of federal funding? Are we mandated not to fund anything the feds don't fund, even though we know it's going to help our district? What's the future that you see with all the Title I? Or maybe it shouldn't be with Title I programs, maybe it should be with kids who fall into this same category. Can we apply these Title I programs to other students in the district that may not qualify for Title I funding?
And actually, with our Wonder Years program, it's district-wide now, and so that's one nice thing that we've been able to do is because we saw at the title schools they would have students that in Wonder Years that would leave and go to it, because they're quite mobile in Title I, and go to another school that might not be Title, and then they were out of the program. And so we thought, it really needs to be a district-wide program to meet the needs for the entire district. As far as the funding, we have expanded Wonder Years. I think we had 16 classrooms and we went to 20, and we've continued that even with the ERA money not there for next year. We're going to continue to have those 22. So that is an expansion, even though it is the same number we had last year. Some of the things we did have last year were cut. And we would like to add more. However, one of the things that comes up is the set-asides for No Child Left Behind every year. We offer supplemental educational services, which are extra tutoring for schools that are in school improvement level 2 or beyond. And every year we have more and more students that participate in that, and parents that find out about it and want to sign their kids up. And that's supplemental tutoring at those schools after the school day or before the school day begins. And we basically, as that grows, we have to set aside dollars at the beginning of the year in those areas, but normally we don't end up spending it all there, so then I can put it back toward the schools or toward the programs. But as we get closer to 2014, which is the goal for No Child Left Behind, those set-asides continue to grow, and that's really what happened once the ERA money was gone. Then we ended up coming back to this coming year where those set-asides have grown for highly qualified teachers. We now need to set aside money for that, parent involvement, and supplemental educational services. For example, I think we've doubled every year in the past 3 years for supplemental educational services. So it could very well spend $900,000 on that next year. And so as that grows, that takes away from all of the other programs and what I can put toward the schools, unfortunately. Not that it's a bad program. It's definitely different. It's a requirement of No Child Left Behind. It just doesn't. We're not able to be as flexible with the funds.
Well, this board may have to decide at some point: are we better taking money from a middle college and putting it toward Wonder Years? I mean, where is we beat this to death too, especially last week. Is where's our best bang for the buck? If you can catch somebody at this age, then are we spending less money on them down the road to make them a successful student?
There's another thing that you need to know that Chris Nicastro mentioned to me today is that there's a possibility of a $60 million grant for statewide preschool. She doesn't think she can get it through the legislature because they feel that it's infringing on the rights of the parents. Well, the parents can choose, but still...
federal grant?
It's a federal grant, yeah. And really, I think, ever since I've been here, we've been really pushing the Wonder Years to try to expand that, but also try to improve the Head Start. Now, Head Start's been struggling nationwide, but I think it's getting better here. And so I think we're starting to see some improvement in Head Start here as well. But still, I agree with you. I think if we can get the preschool piece going without violating the private preschools, that's a big part of it.
Two things. I think there's confusion maybe sometimes in the public or in the media because as we talk about our Title I schools, because we're building wide. We're not just serving, if 90% of the students qualify, we're serving 100% in that building because that's what we do. So when they talk about Title I schools, that's not every student in that school who would really qualify, but we're giving them all the same services. And on the other hand, if they're not a Title I building, we've got 25% who would qualify, and they're not getting all those services. So I think in Dr. Goodman's report, that's what I understand. This is an MSIP report, and that's what you got to do. And we talked about that before. If we got to approve it, then I think we ought to approve it. Did we just approve it? But where we really look at it's in our quarterly reports, because these students are all included in that quarterly report. They're all there. If we test all of our third graders, they're in a third grade class. So I think then's when we can look at subgroups, because we can have subgroups in other schools who aren't Title I who would be free and reduced lunch, and how are they doing in those schools? They're really not, they're not Title I, but if they were in that school, they'd be Title I, and they qualify in the free and reduced lunch subgroup category. So I think we can do some things with our data that maybe this doesn't do, and take some things and be able to look at it a little differently, which to me that's where when it's reported to me they're not, they just don't look at a district as a whole and understand we have students in every building from I think a low of 10 or 12% in one elementary school to over 90 in others, but they don't all get these federal funds. And so therefore, what could we, just like Wonder Years, what could we replicate that's being funded? Literacy coaches. I mean, reading recovery, we do beginning, middle, and end. Our literacy coaches really, can we identify that as something? And if so, as a district, if it is, we can put money there, just like Dr. Prater said, with, with Wonder Years. And that's our decision. It doesn't have to be with that money. But if we don't take the good things from this program, just like the choice program, and replicate them in others, I think we're missing the boat. And it's just nice that we can take some of those funds, but know that the federal government tells us you got to spend certain money someplace, even though you're not getting as big a bang for your buck. You still have to spend money there, which is kind of crazy. But I mean, they have to understand that's what you need to do. And there is, the only question I have, some buildings do have some flexibility individually.
Yeah, definitely. We sit down with each building principal, and they usually bring a team in every spring, and we let them know what their allocation is, and we talk about the data. We talk about the staffing that they currently have and what they'd like to do in the future. And then we go from there. We establish the budgets, and then we meet throughout the year with the principals and the sites.
Thank you, Mr. Hubbard.
Just one go. Mr. Hubbard, you've seen the change from the targeted assistance aspect of Title I,
right,
where you identify those students not only because they're on their low socioeconomic, but because they are a grade or two behind grade level. Right. So you move from that targeted assistance piece to a school-wide. What differences do you see in that? Is in terms of that's better for us as a district?
Right. The big thing, the state really pushed for it, and whenever I talked to the representative of the state, the school improvement supervisor for our area, she talked to me about all the different benefits that you would have from it. It's much more flexible. In targeted assistance, basically, if you have a literacy coach, the way that you were supposed to use that literacy coach is only for the students that were receiving those targeted services, those teachers that had those students. So if I have two first grade classrooms and I had one teacher that had a student in reading recovery, the other one didn't, the literacy coach could not work with that other teacher. So there were a lot of barriers with that, and a lot of barriers to how you could spend the money. That other teacher, they couldn't get any supplies with federal funds because they didn't have any students that weren't targeted. So there were a lot of barriers with that. With this, it's more flexible. The literacy coach, math coach can work with all teachers, professional development. If you have a teacher that you'd like to have go visit other classrooms of high-performing schools, get some ideas, they can go, and we can use the money to fund that, all sorts of professional development activities, as well as supplies. Every student is able to use supplies. If we get technology, all students can benefit from that. We get a smart board in the classroom. We don't just say only for Title I students, because they're all Title I students now. So it's much more flexible. School-wide, really the funds, it's, really, I was going to say something else that flew out of my head, but, really it's just been much more flexible spending, and we've been able to make much more impact with the students, because we can look at any subgroup whenever their scores come back, whether performance or MAP. They can look at any subgroup and say, this subgroup is the one we really need to be working on, and it doesn't have to be the lowest kids overall. They can just say, this is the subgroup that really, if we're going to get out of school improvement, this is the one we need to work on. And so they can target that. So we really have targeted pieces. We're still using multi-criteria, lots of different assessments to target students, and then we have the push in and pull out services for them. So we're still doing a lot of aspects of that, but we're able to meet the needs of each building a lot more effectively.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
IT program. Is that you, Mr. Green?
Mr. Green. No, Ms. Kissinger.
You have the board item, and I've already heard the introduction to the program evaluation, and Mr. Green is here if you have any questions about his program evaluation. I would like to take the opportunity to personally and publicly thank the IT staff. I think you're well aware as a board of how we've moved forward as a district with technology. We've had major implementations over the last 3 to 5 years with the Cognos Data Warehouse, the Performance Series Assessment, a new student information system that's providing access to parents and teachers online, and our IT department has really led the way with all of those major initiatives and have, as you can see, done it very efficiently and very effectively as indicated in the data. And as I said, Mr. Green is here if you have specific questions.
Just a quick question. What kind of shot out to me was that the need for more staff. It was kind of apparent to me that you're getting more calls and your response time's going down, which I think is going to make people not so happy with you in the future. And I think as a district, we need to, if we're going to go into 21st century skills and with technology-rich instruction, we got to have the technology-rich backup.
And as you can see, that was one of the pieces in the budget for this year was 2 additional FTE for IT, and that was driven by this specific data. That was why that request came forward. And you'll also probably noticed in the next steps that one of the things Mr. Green's going to be working on with his staff is a proposal for this next budget cycle to continue to address those needs, because with our learning model and our digital vision for the future, those needs will continue to increase. So that is part of the next steps, is to develop that proposal.
On your average student to computer ratio on your chart, and it's showing good, it's good because that ratio is going down. Is that 2.35 student to computer ratio, is that an average elementary, middle, high, or do you see it
It's across the board.
look a little different?
High schools will always be better because of the labs and the business instructional labs and the foreign language labs, and just across the board. But what we're trying to do is expand those levels not only in high schools, middle schools, and in elementary, mainly because of performance series testing, EOC testing, and the kind of testing that we're trying to do in the district.
That was my next question, so you got that.
Thank you very much.
Fix something here real quick.
We've got about 30 more minutes of work. Do we need a break, or should we forge ahead? Okay. 4-minute break.
4 minutes. 3.5.
Tick. I know, you're good.
where are we at now?
We are ready for 8.01, revision of board policy KLB.
Mrs. That would be Kelvin?
This is the first.
Dr. Pepper.
Good evening. This evening we bring a revision of board policy KLB, reconsideration of a book or other instructional materials, for first reading. This policy, the current policy, was adopted October 15th of 2002 and as part of a regular ongoing review. We've established that there was a need for some updated language to more clearly delineate the steps of our reconsideration procedure. And so we've attached a copy of that policy, and we'll be happy to answer any questions, but our recommendation is that you approve revised board policy KLB for first reading.
Questions? You referenced policy IGAC in that policy, and that was last updated in '93, so you might want to look at that one.
Yes.
Remember, when we vote, after we have a motion, when we vote, you have to minimize the PDF part before we vote.
We're not voting.
Yeah, we're voting. Since this is a combined meeting, we're voting tonight.
This is first reading.
Yes, I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty?
Second.
Dr. Frederick? A motion and a second that the board accept policy, I got to get back to it, policy, revised board policy KLB, reconsideration of a book or other instructional materials for first reading. Okay. Everybody's came up? Good.
I did. At least I thought I did.
There it goes. The motion was by Mrs. Twitty. That's okay. 8.02, Board Policy DIAA, Fund Balance. It's our second reading. We'll vote on it tonight. If there's any questions for Mr. Everest. I could listen for a motion.
Move for approval.
Mr. Lee made the motion.
Second.
Mr. Renner, second. That the Board of Education approves policy DIAA fund balance for second reading. .03 Board Policy IIBC, the Instructional Media Center and School Libraries name change, second reading.
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty.
Second.
And Mr. Lee, that the Board of Education approve policy IIBC, the Instructional Media Center and School Libraries for second reading. Thank you. 8.04 Board Policy EGAAA, second reading. Okay.
Got it now. Now you can go.
Thank you. Second reading, reproduction of copyrighted materials. Any questions on that one?
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty and Mr. Lee seconded it, that the Board of Education approve EGAAA, reproduction of copyrighted materials. I don't know if that was a grunt or a second, but I took it as a second. 8.05, and if we need to slow down, just let me know. Employee sick leave plan, second reading to bring this in alignment with our collective bargaining agreements. Any questions on that one? Good. Mr. Lee?
Second.
Mr. Renner, that the Board of Education approve policy GBBDA, employee sick leave plan for second reading. 8.06 is the revision of board policy GBM, staff complaints and grievances. Again, this is a second reading. Any questions you've thought of for Mr. McKenna? Mrs. Twitty.
Second.
Mr. Lee, that the board approves GBM staff complaints and grievances for second reading. And the final one is 8.07, deletion of board policy GDBF, support staff maintenance and custodial services. Again, this was to bring it in alignment with the collective bargaining. It's a second reading. Any questions for Mr. McKenna on that?
So moved.
Mr. Lee?
Second.
Mrs. Dr. Frederick, that the Board of Education approve the deletion of GDBF, support staff maintenance, custodial services, and supply center for second reading. Thank you all very much on those. 8.08, Jeffries Elementary School. Mr. Wendt.
Thank you. This is for the Jeffries Elementary School bus loop. As I mentioned during the earlier presentation and showed that bus loop, this is one of the ways in improving the traffic issues that we're having out at Jeffries, and also paving the way, so to speak, for the new construction coming down the road. This bus loop would actually connect to Glen Street on the back of the property there. We bid the project. We received 2 bids on the project. The bid tab is attached. Dake Wells was the architect on the project. This will be funded from the 2011-12 major repair budget. We are recommending the base bid plus several alternates, a concrete trail, walking trail in lieu of asphalt. We're also looking at the install asphalt overlay. This is to help with some drainage off of the current hard surface play area in the back, and then also a fire line extension, which will be a requirement that we will need to do in anticipation of the finished product with our construction. It is administration's recommendation that the board issues a contract to APAC of Springfield, Missouri in the amount of $189,200 for the base bid and alternates 3, 6, and 7.
Questions for Mr. Wendt? I think everybody, we saw the drawing earlier.
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty?
Second.
Mr. Lee, that the board issue a contract to APAC Springfield for $189,200 for the base bid and alternates 3, 6, and 7. Thank you, Mr. Wendt. Oh, you're still up there. They left you with the trash contract. Go ahead.
This is a renewal of trash collection service, which is also provides our co-mingling of the recycling. This was bid last year, and so as I mentioned, it's a renewal. There's an option for 2 renewals. This would represent a 4% increase for this renewal. We believe, based on the fuel increases over this past year, that this is a good value. And that is one of the reasons that we did not rebid it at this time. We were very satisfied with the service. And it is our recommendation that the board awards the contract to Allied Waste Services of Missouri in the amount of $122,693.45.
Questions?
The 4% was built into the original contract?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's what I thought. That wasn't a negotiated fee, okay.
We can really say there's a 4% increase in waste now, can't we?
That's right.
Any other questions or a motion?
So moved.
Mr. Lee?
Second.
Mr. Renner, that the board award the contract to Allied Waste Services of Missouri in the amount of $122,693.45.
Mr. Chodes.
Thank you, Mr. Wendt. Go ahead.
Thank you. Each year, the school board establishes the tuition rate for non-resident students. We use a calculation that DESE uses and many other districts use.
Last year it was $8,350. This year it's $8,447. It's somewhat of a moot issue because we don't have any non-resident students. And we ask that the board set the tuition rates for the 2011-12 school year at $8,447 per student.
Mrs. Twitty?
Second.
Mr. Renner? That the board set the tuition rates for 2011-2012 at $8,447 per student. Thank you. And the final action item is the free and reduced lunch income criteria.
Similarly, each year the U.S. Department of Agriculture establishes the income criteria to be used in determining the eligibility for free and reduced price lunches. These amounts and prices will be distributed to parents, and we ask that the board approve or direct administration to distribute the USDA income criteria.
Questions for Mr. Chodos?
So moved.
Mrs. Twitty?
Second.
Mr. Renner? That the board approve, that the board direct administration distribute the USDA income criteria to determine eligibility for free and reduced lunch prices. Thank you, Mr. Chodos. Several routine action items are on the agenda. Can be voted on all at once. I would listen for a motion to approve each of the routine action items as submitted.
So moved.
Mr. Renner?
Second.
Mr. Lee? They're going to let us vote on that one, Kathy? Okay. Let's start with Mr. Lee.
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
It's multiple items. Yeah, that's it is. Multiple items. We have to do each one. Well, we'll have to figure it out.
And were there any public comments on non-agenda items? Okay, thank you. Legislative report. Mr. Lee or Dr. Ritter, anything cooking up there?
Well, I think the thing as far as federal, we're seeing cuts in title. I can't tell you the exact amount, but we are expecting cuts in title monies, and and I think that's going to continue in their conversations as far as the. I don't know. I don't think it's not necessarily just tied to a deficit. I think it's all tied to the recession as well. But other than that, I think there's a special session, but I don't think that involves us in education as much. And so I think it's a quiet time.
Good.
You need to enjoy it.
Hopefully at the next meeting, not the the study session, but the next board meeting, we'll be able, because MSBA has an advocacy meeting between now and then, and that's where we'll talk about if there's any legislative priorities that we're not going to issue any new ones, but at least from the MSBA standpoint, I should have a report if there's anything new on the horizon that's different from last year. So hopefully that will be coming down the pike and everybody gets ready for January.
Any future issues?
I'd just make one comment, be real short and brief. You're probably going to be seeing some discussion over the next 60, 90 days with the vision project.
Oh, yes.
Public Education Vision Project that MSBA and MASA is putting together. That should be hopefully written and completed in August. And so So hopefully there'll be some, because we're going to approve it in September, or not approve it, we're going to present it publicly in September, and there may be some things that come out with that. So I don't know what it's going to look like yet. I know what one piece is going to look like, but I don't know what the whole thing's going to look like. So hopefully between that, MSIP, some resolution that's kind of all coming to a head. It may be a crash, but I mean, it's coming all kind of at the same time this fall. So
I think MSIP 5 is targeting September 1st, which is rather early as far as moving that forward. So.
Whether they
we'll see.
take care of comments or not.
I don't know. Anyway, September 1st.
That's an editorial comment. So.
Any other business to come before the board? Your operations reports attached. Do your plus deltas, if you would, please. We have no executive session, so I think we adjourned. Thank you very much.
Say something. Okay.
Let's talk about two issues. We take private schools, so it's a Greenville, and it has access to it.
We have to live in our district, so we get that.